The exotalis hovered above Earth like a dark, luminous eclipse. Its presence sent ripples through global communication networks, sparking a blend of fear, awe, and wonder. People in cities across the world rushed to their windows, staring up at the impossibly sleek craft, their minds struggling to comprehend what their eyes were seeing. News stations broadcasted live footage of the ship, its immense size casting shadows over entire states. It was like nothing humanity had ever seen. No sharp edges or visible engines, just a smooth, pulsating orb that seemed to breathe with the pulse of the universe itself. But it wasn't just the ship's otherworldly design that grabbed attention. It was the fact that no one had known it was coming. Governments scrambled to assemble their defense teams, even as they tried to make sense of the situation. The United Nations convened an emergency meeting, but there was no time for lengthy deliberations. The alien presence was here, and it wasn't going away. On the ground, Captain Erica Nolan stood in front of a small group of military officials, all of them fixated on the glowing ship overhead. Their faces were a mix of tension and disbelief. Erica had seen her fair share of crises, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, even close calls with nuclear war, but nothing had prepared her for this. The aliens' sudden arrival felt like something out of a science fiction novel, except this was real. The world's military leaders had agreed on one thing. They couldn't risk antagonizing these beings. What if they were peaceful? What if their technology could revolutionize life on Earth? Command has already alerted the President, General Thomas Harris said, his voice clipped with anxiety. We're supposed to wait for further instructions. Erica didn't respond. She was too busy scanning the skies, trying to piece together the few facts they had. No one had yet spoken to the aliens. No one knew if they were hostile or peaceful. Yet, the more Erica thought about it, the more a strange feeling tugged at her. They've come for something. But what? That's when the voice came, soft but commanding, breaking through the static in their comms. It wasn't for a human. It was smooth and melodic, a sound like a symphony, and yet the words were unmistakable. We come in peace. Please do not fear us. The communication wasn't from a ship, but directly from the beings themselves. Their voice, calm and reassuring, echoed in every language, in every corner of the globe, as if they were speaking directly into the minds of every human on Earth. The world you know is old, the voice continued. You cling to weapons that no longer serve you. We have come to help you move beyond them. Erica froze, feeling a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a meeting. It was an intervention. Why weapons, she wondered. Why are they starting there? And then it clicked. They had seen Earth's military build-up. They knew about humanity's obsession with arms. But why? And what did they think about it? This was just the beginning. The world held its breath. News outlets across the globe went into overdrive, broadcasting live streams of the massive alien ship hovering in Earth's atmosphere. The exotalis loomed over the planet like a celestial sentinel, its pulsing light casting an eerie glow over cities below. For hours, there was only silence, until a new message came through on every screen, in every language. We await your leaders. We come to learn, not to conquer. After much debate, a small delegation was formed, led by Captain Erica Nolan. As one of the highest-ranking officers in the U.S. military and the designated first contact representative, she was entrusted with managing Earth's initial response. It was an unprecedented role, and one that had every nerve in her body on edge. The delegation was brought to a specially constructed meeting site in the Nevada desert, far from prying eyes. The site was isolated, secure, an appropriate place for Earth's first conversation with beings from another star system. The sun was setting when the alien ship slowly descended to land. Its landing was almost imperceptible, as if the ship had no weight at all. As the dust settled, the hatch opened, and the first of the Elythians emerged. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with translucent skin that shimmered in the fading sunlight. Their eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed with an almost ethereal light, and their movements were fluid, deliberate, and graceful. There was something unearthly about them, something serene yet profoundly alien. Their leader, a figure named Nera, stepped forward, her voice resonating in Erica's mind as if spoken aloud. "We are Elythians. We have come to learn from you." Erica took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Behind her stood a team of US diplomats, scientists, and military officers, all watching intently. She stepped forward to greet Nera, offering a formal handshake, human custom. Nera's gaze flickered briefly to Erica's hand before raising her own in a fluid motion, a gesture that felt both like a greeting and an invitation. "We have studied your broadcasts," Nera continued, her voice clear and calm in Erica's mind. "Your history, your triumphs and your wars, your technologies. You have reached a point where you no longer need weapons to survive, and yet you still cling to them. Why?" The question hit like a stone dropped into a still pond, sending ripples across the assembled humans. Erica hesitated, unsure how to answer. The Elythians had clearly done their homework. Their understanding of humanity was thorough, but it was also superficial. Weapons, to them, were primitive relics of a violent past, tools of destruction that had no place in an evolved society. "We need them for security," Erica finally replied, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "To protect ourselves from unknowns." "Unknowns?" Naira's tone was gentle, almost puzzled. "The fear of the unknown is what drives your people to keep such tools. But we have learned, after millennia of peace, that fear is not a reason to hold on to weapons. You have transcended the need for them." Erica's gaze shifted to the other humans in the room, scientists, generals, and diplomats. None of them seemed to have an immediate answer. How could they explain humanity's deep-rooted reliance on weapons, something so embedded in their history, their culture, and their very identity? As Naira's gaze swept across the group, the silence stretched on. It was as if she were waiting for a deeper, more honest answer. And maybe, just maybe, they didn't have one. "We would like to understand," Naira said at last, her voice turning softer. "Not just your need for weapons, but the heart of your people. Why do you hold on to them?" Erica swallowed. The answer wasn't just diplomatic. It was personal. And in this moment, it was clear. Humanity's relationship with weapons wasn't just a matter of defense. It was something more. The aliens were waiting for that answer, and Erica wasn't sure how to give it. The next day, Naira and her team were escorted to a military base in Nevada, where they would witness firsthand the human relationship with weapons. Captain Erica Nolan accompanied them, her mind still heavy with the weight of the previous day's conversation. The Elythians seemed to grasp human history, but they couldn't understand the core of it, the need for weapons that had persisted through ages of war, peace, and everything in between. The base was an imposing complex, nestled in the Nevada desert. Rows of tanks, helicopters, and aircraft lined the hangars, and the hum of engines and the clink of metal filled the air. Naira's eyes darted around, taking in the machinery, her expression unreadable. The humans who worked here, however, seemed oblivious to the visitors from the stars. They were focused on their tasks, as they always were. Sergeant Jake Carter, a veteran of multiple tours in the Middle East, was chosen to guide Naira through the daily routines of the soldiers. He was the last person who wanted to explain his relationship with his rifle to an alien, but he had little choice. The Elythians were curious, and curiosity often led to uncomfortable questions. "Sergeant," Neera began, her voice calm, though it carried a hint of something deeper, something that bordered on confusion. "What is the purpose of this weapon? It is not merely for defense, I assume. You maintain it with great care. Is it not a burden?" Jake paused, eyeing the rifle resting on his shoulder, then turned to face Neera. His hands moved instinctively to the rifle, running his fingers along its polished surface, like a man caressing a long-lost companion. "It's not a burden," he said quietly, his voice low but steady. "This weapon, it's a part of me. It's a tool, yeah, but it's also a reminder. A reminder of the men I lost, the battles I fought in, the wars I survived." Neera tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly in thought. She hadn't expected such an answer. For the Elythians, weaponry had become obsolete long ago. Their society had evolved past the need for tools of violence, relying instead on technology and collective effort to resolve conflict. The idea that a weapon could be a symbol was alien to her. "Your rifle, is it just a tool to protect your body, or is it something more?" Neera asked, her tone almost inquisitive, as if she were trying to piece together a puzzle she didn't fully understand. Jake's expression softened. The question lingered in the air. "It's both," he said. "It's a tool, yes, but it's also part of my history. The men who fought beside me, the missions I completed. That rifle was there for it all. It's how I survived. It's how we all survived. It's not just metal. It's memory." He paused, swallowing hard, his eyes distant. "It's not just about what it can do in battle. It's what it represents. It's the strength to keep going, even when everything feels like it's falling apart." Neera remained silent for a long moment, studying him. She could sense the weight of his words, though she still could not grasp the full depth of what he meant. A weapon as a memory, as a symbol of survival, was an idea foreign to her kind. Sergeant Carter didn't seem to need her understanding. He had said his piece, and as Neera absorbed his words, the complex relationship humans had with their weapons started to come into sharper focus. The rifle wasn't just a piece of machinery. It was a connection to the past, to comrades lost and battles fought, and ultimately to the survival of the human spirit itself. As the day wore on, the Elythians observed how soldiers interacted with their weapons, cleaning them with reverence, checking their precision, and maintaining them with meticulous care. They began to understand that, for humans, these weapons were not merely instruments of destruction. They were intertwined with their very sense of self. The more Neera watched, the more she began to feel an uncomfortable sense of awe. Could a weapon truly represent something so profound? She wasn't sure. But it was clear now that humanity's need for weapons wasn't just about defense, it was about remembering. And perhaps, in that remembering, humans held on to a piece of themselves, something they weren't ready to let go of. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, Neera sat silently in the back of a military transport truck, her thoughts swirling. The day had been long, filled with revelations, but they only raised more questions. The humans' connection to their weapons was not just practical, it was deeply emotional. The soldiers they had observed had treated their firearms with the same reverence as a sacred object. Neera couldn't reconcile that with the Elythian view of weapons as tools for a violent past. The next morning, Erica Nolan took Neera and her team on a different kind of tour. They would visit historical sites that had shaped humanity's understanding of war, places where weapons had been forged in the crucible of human conflict. Their first stop was the National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. The granite walls were etched with the names of the fallen, thousands of soldiers whose lives had been sacrificed in battles that spanned continents. The memorial was a somber place, but to Niera, it was a place of confusion. As she gazed at the names carved into stone, she couldn't fathom why a species so capable of peace would willingly go to war, sacrificing so many lives in the name of some higher cause. "Do you honor them here, Sergeant?" Niera asked, turning to Erica as they stood in front of a massive wall of names. Erica nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "We honor them by remembering," she said softly, "the ones who didn't come home. The ones who didn't make it out of the hell they were in. We keep their memory alive because that's how we keep from making the same mistakes." Niera's eyes narrowed as she processed the response. Memory. It was a concept that kept recurring in her interactions with the humans. Memory as a form of survival, as a form of respect. The Alithians had long since abandoned such notions, having evolved into a species that did not remember war, but rather sought only peace and understanding. Erica led them through the memorial, pointing out the various symbols that represented different branches of the military, the different campaigns. She explained how each monument was dedicated to the sacrifices made, how the weapons they used in those wars were now relics, carefully preserved in museums, revered for their historical significance. These weapons, Erica explained, they weren't just used to kill, they were used to protect, to defend everything we stand for, and we honor them not because they were tools of death, but because they were tools of survival. As they continued their tour, Niera began to understand more, though her thoughts remained clouded. She visited the artifacts section of the museum, where old military gear was displayed: helmets, rifles, uniforms. Some of the soldiers' weapons were decades old, yet they were still treated with an almost sacred reverence, as if the past could be kept alive through their preservation. In one room, a young curator spoke to Niera about the iconic M1 Garand rifle used in World War II. "It's not just a piece of machinery," the curator said. "It's a symbol of what people endured to protect their country, their families. We don't forget that." Niera felt a shift in her perception. She didn't fully understand it, but she saw the weight these weapons carried. They weren't just for fighting. They were about memory, about the lessons of the past. In this way, weapons were more than instruments of destruction. They were monuments to human perseverance, to the scars of history that could never be erased. As the tour ended, Niera stood before a large display of old warplanes, the final stop on their visit. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had missed something crucial. The humans had long since moved beyond the need for war, yet they carried the weight of their history with them, in the form of these weapons. Is that what it means to be human? She wondered. To hold on to the past, even as you evolve? The question lingered in her mind, unanswered for now. But one thing was certain: humanity's relationship with its weapons was more complex than she had ever imagined. The quiet hum of Alithian technology filled the air as the joint human-Alithian team prepared for the most critical mission in Earth's history. An asteroid, roughly the size of a city block, was on a direct course to collide with Earth in just 3 days. The stakes could not have been higher. Humanity's future, their very survival, was at risk. Despite the urgency of the mission, there was a strange sense of calm in the air. Niera and her team had joined forces with the best minds humanity had to offer, including Erica Nolan, scientists, engineers, and military specialists. The humans were eager to cooperate, but there was an underlying tension, an unspoken awareness that the Alithians' arrival, for all its promise of peace, also represented something deeply unsettling. The aliens were clearly more advanced, more capable. For once, the humans had to follow someone else's lead. But the asteroid wasn't just a problem to be solved by technology alone. The situation was also a test of trust, and of humanity's ability to adapt to a new reality without falling back on old habits. The Alithians had asked for peace, for a new path forward, but this was still a world where weapons held a deep, ingrained significance. Could the humans set aside their history of conflict for a higher cause, or would the lure of old power, of destruction, prove too strong? At the mission's command center, Erica paced back and forth, reviewing the data on the approaching asteroid. Alithian technology could deflect the asteroid with minimal collateral damage, but the plan required precise coordination with human satellites, rockets, and global military infrastructure. It would be a delicate dance between human ingenuity and alien precision. Naira watched from a nearby console, her glowing eyes focused on the data displays. She had been impressed by humanity's ability to strategize under pressure, but she also noticed the constant tension in the room. There were moments when the humans would glance nervously at the Alithian technology, their hands hovering near weapons, just in case. Naira could feel it, the pull of old instincts. Even now, in the face of a global crisis, humans were holding on to the idea of control, of force. Erica, Naira said softly, breaking into her thoughts. Why do you still cling to weapons, even when you know they aren't necessary? Erica stopped pacing and turned to face the alien. Her eyes were weary, but resolute. We don't always need them, she said slowly, as if weighing her words. But they're part of who we are. Our history, our survival. We use them as tools, sure, but they also remind us of what we've been through, of what we've survived. There was a pause. Naira's expression remained unreadable, but her thoughts seemed to linger on Erica's words. She had heard this reasoning before, but this time it sounded different, more honest, more raw. The mission was underway. Rockets were launched. Lasers were locked onto the asteroid, and Earth's combined military and scientific force began to work in tandem with Alithian technology. The asteroid's course was altered, but there was a moment of tension as one of the satellites malfunctioned. Panic swept through the command center. Engineers scrambled to fix the problem, but it was clear they couldn't do it alone. Erica gave a sharp order: deploy the interceptors now. Use everything we've got. No time to waste. Naira felt a surge of hesitation among the humans as they scrambled to prepare their weapon systems. It wasn't the first time she had seen the human need for power take over in a crisis, but this time it was different. The asteroid was still a threat, but now, in a moment of uncertainty, the humans were reaching for the old tools, the same tools that had caused so much destruction in their history. Naira glanced at Erica, and for the first time, she felt something like empathy. The humans weren't just afraid of losing their planet. They were afraid of losing themselves. And in that fear, they clung to the one thing that had always been within their grasp, their weapons. As the plan unfolded, the asteroid was successfully diverted, but not without a few close calls. The humans had proven their ingenuity, and the Alithians had shared their knowledge. For now, peace had prevailed, but it wasn't without its lingering complications. The mission's success felt hollow for Naira, because even in the face of unity, she had seen the humans struggle to let go of their past. It wasn't enough for them to embrace peace. They had to fear peace, and in doing so, they still depended on old ways. And in that moment, Naira understood something she hadn't before. Peace, for humanity, wasn't just a choice. It was a constant battle against everything they had known. The asteroid had been diverted, but the sense of relief that followed was short-lived. In the days after the successful mission, the world began to stir with a new unease. The alien presence that had once seemed so promising was now the subject of deeper scrutiny. Governments, military leaders, and the general public all began asking questions that hadn't existed before, or had been pushed aside in the rush to deal with the immediate crisis. What were the true motives of the Elythians? Were they here to help, or was their intervention part of a larger plan? Was humanity simply a stepping stone in the grand design of a vastly superior species? The questions were whispered in dark rooms, on online forums, in the quiet spaces between the daily news broadcasts. People had always feared the unknown, but now that fear was becoming more palpable, more real. For Erica Nolan, the uncertainty weighed on her more heavily than it ever had before. She had seen the Elythians in action. She had worked with them, trusted them, and watched them save the world. But the events of the last few days had planted a seed of doubt in her mind, one she couldn't easily dismiss. The Elythians had saved humanity from the asteroid, but they had also revealed something else. Their technology was far beyond anything Earth had ever known, and their power was unimaginable. Erica sat in her office late one night, reviewing the reports from the mission. She was exhausted, her eyes heavy, but her mind was restless. The human forces had worked alongside the Elythians without fully understanding the extent of their capabilities. No one had asked the right questions. The door to her office opened with a soft click, and Captain Lucas Hayes, her second-in-command, stepped inside. His face was drawn, eyes shadowed with fatigue. "Ma'am, we've got a situation," Hayes said, his tone low and urgent. "What's going on?" Erica asked, her pulse quickening. Several military installations around the world, mostly in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, have reported strange activities. Satellite feeds show unexplained energy signatures near key military sites. And there's a rising number of unconfirmed reports of advanced weaponry being deployed. Weaponry that we didn't see in the Elythian demonstrations. It's like they've been holding something back. Erica's brow furrowed. She hadn't noticed any signs of deception from Neera and her team, but then again, the Elythians had never been entirely transparent with humanity. They had shared enough to secure the collaboration, but not everything. Could it be sabotage? Erica asked, leaning forward in her chair. Some kind of manipulation from the outside. Lucas shook his head. It doesn't look like it. There's no trace of interference from any of our enemies, and the Elythian tech is unlike anything we've ever seen. These energy signatures, they match the technology the Elythians used to divert the asteroid. But now it's being used in ways we didn't expect. The implications were staggering. If the Elythians had been withholding technology, if they had been testing humanity's reaction to certain capabilities, it could mean that their offer of help wasn't as selfless as it appeared. Maybe they were trying to understand the human instinct for violence, seeing how far they could push before the temptation to use force resurfaced. "Have you contacted Neera?" Erica asked, standing up. "I've tried, but the communication lines are down. They're not responding to our calls directly. We may need to initiate a more direct approach," Lucas said, his tone edging toward concern. Erica's mind raced. She had trusted the Elythians, believed in their promise of peace, but now she was faced with a terrifying possibility. What if the true test had never been the asteroid, but the way humanity responded to the power they were being offered? The old instincts, the drive for control, the urge to dominate, had the Elythians been testing those impulses, waiting for the moment when humanity would fall into the trap of using force. The idea felt like a betrayal, yet it was the only explanation that made sense. "We need to find out what's really going on," Erica said firmly. "We need answers. Now." As she and Lucas left her office, a heavy sense of foreboding settled in her chest. The mission had been a success, but what came next? If the Elythians were playing a deeper game, humanity had no way of knowing who, or what, was really pulling the strings. And if they weren't careful, humanity might become the very thing they had fought to avoid, the architects of their own destruction. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Erica Nolan and Captain Hayes worked with the highest levels of military intelligence and the remnants of their best scientific minds. It was a race against time now, not just to understand the mysterious energy signatures, but to determine if they were dealing with a covert alien agenda. If the Elythians had been withholding technology or manipulating humanity's responses, it would mean that their peaceful intentions had always been part of a much darker plan. The very survival of Earth was at stake. Erica, trying to suppress the growing unease in her gut, spent the night in the command center. The reports kept coming in from the military installations where the anomalous activity had been detected. The strange energy pulses were becoming more frequent, and the equipment monitoring them was showing unusual levels of power that seemed far beyond even Elythian capabilities. Whatever they had been hiding, it wasn't just technology, it was a weapon. She glanced at the screen, which showed a schematic of an underground Elythian facility located near the Ural Mountains in Russia. Satellite surveillance had picked up signs of increased activity in the area, energy readings, electromagnetic interference, and a previously undiscovered subterranean base. "Erica, you need to see this," Lucas called from the far side of the room. His voice was tight, clipped with urgency. Erica hurried over to his console, where he had pulled up a series of encrypted communication logs. They were from a high-ranking Elythian officer, one of Nera's subordinates, someone Erica hadn't met in person, but who had been involved in the joint mission to divert the asteroid. The messages were terse, but the language was clear, military protocol. The humans had been out of the loop. "These orders are coming from their leadership," Lucas said, tapping the screen. "It's a command structure we never knew about. They're preparing to deploy something, and it's all centered around Earth's key military installations." Erica's pulse quickened. "A weapon," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "They've been preparing to deploy a weapon, and we've walked right into it." The realization hit her with a brutal clarity. The Elythians hadn't been interested in peace. They had been studying humanity's response to the unknown, to their overwhelming power. The asteroid deflection, the technological cooperation, all of it had been a cover for the real plan. They had been testing humanity to see if they would fall into old patterns of fear and aggression. They had learned enough. "Do we have a way to trace the source?" Erica asked urgently, her military instincts taking over. Lucas nodded grimly. "We've triangulated the location of the facility. It's just outside of Moscow, and it's heavily fortified. The energy signatures match those of their most advanced weapons systems. We need to act fast before they deploy whatever they're holding. Prepare a strike team." "We're going in," Erica said, her voice firm, but her mind swirling with the enormity of the task ahead. They had trusted the Elythians, believed in their promises, and yet now they faced a dangerous truth. What appeared to be their saviors were, in fact, preparing to use humanity as a pawn in a much larger game. The risk was immense. If they were wrong, they could alienate the Elythians completely, ruining any chance for cooperation. If they were right, the fate of Earth would hang in the balance. As Erica and Lucas prepared for the mission, a question nagged at her. Had the Elythians been waiting for humanity to make this move? Somewhere in the heart of that underground facility, she would find the answer. The Russian facility was buried deep beneath the Ural Mountains, hidden from both prying satellites and conventional surveillance. As Erica and her team approached the location, their aircraft cut through the cold night air, the tension thickening with every passing second. In the cockpit beside her, Lucas Hayes checked the data one last time, his face grim. "We're about 5 minutes out. The Alithian facility is right under our feet, buried under layers of rock and reinforced alloy," Lucas said, his voice low. "Expect heavy resistance." Erica's fingers tightened around the armrests. They had already bypassed the Alithian security perimeter, but that didn't mean they were safe. Everything about this mission screamed danger, from the fact that they hadn't been told about this facility's existence, to the ominous energy signatures that had sent them rushing into the heart of enemy territory. "We're going in," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet tension of the cabin. "We don't have much time before they activate whatever weapon they're preparing." Minutes later, they touched down in the shadow of the facility, a massive underground complex. The team disembarked swiftly, their boots crunching against the frozen earth. The base was eerily quiet, but the vibrations beneath their feet told them everything they needed to know. The Alithians were preparing for something big. And it wasn't just the humans they planned to use this weapon on. As they made their way into the facility's entrance, Erica's mind raced. She got trusted Niera and the other Alithians, but now the truth was clear. The peaceful message they had spread was a facade, a ruse to mask their true intentions. What had started as a hopeful encounter had become a calculated test of humanity's resilience, a test they were failing by resisting the overwhelming power the Alithians had at their disposal. "I don't like this," Lucas muttered, checking his rifle's sights. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. They've been building something we don't fully understand." They breached the first set of security doors, moving deeper into the facility. Every step echoed, every moment felt like it could be their last, but nothing prepared them for what they saw when they reached the heart of the base. The central chamber was massive, filled with rows of Alithian consoles, glowing with unfamiliar energy. In the center stood a massive device, a towering structure covered in strange symbols, its core pulsating with immense power. The weapon was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. It was alien in design, but it hummed with a malevolent intent. And standing before it, bathed in the unnatural light, was Niera. Erica's heart skipped a beat. Niera's eyes met hers, calm, but filled with something cold, something Erica hadn't seen before. "You found it," Niera said, her voice steady. "The weapon, the one we've been preparing for you." Erica's stomach tightened. "What is this, Niera? Why?" "We wanted to see how you would respond," Niera replied, her tone almost clinical. "Your people claim to want peace, but you still cling to the tools of violence. You still fear. And in that fear, you've revealed something critical. You're not ready. Not yet." Erica's mind whirled. So this was a test. All of it. Niera nodded slowly. "Yes, we offered you the gift of peace, but you couldn't resist the pull of violence. You still depend on weapons to define who you are. And when faced with something greater than you, you reached for those weapons, those symbols of survival." Erica's hand rested on her sidearm, but she did not draw it. She knew now that it wasn't just about the weapon in her hand. It was about everything they had built as a species. The trust, the struggles, the survival instinct that ran through every human. "You can't force peace, Niera," Erica said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. "You can't break us with fear. We may be flawed, but that doesn't mean we can't change." Niera regarded her silently for a moment, and then, to Erica's surprise, a faint smile touched her lips. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps there is more to you than we thought. But you will need to prove it every day. peace cannot be given. It must be earned. Before Erica could respond, Nera's hand moved to the control panel. The device before them hummed with life, but instead of unleashing destruction, the energy in the chamber began to shift, softer, quieter. The weapon powered down, its dangerous hum fading into silence. "This is our choice now, Erica Nolan," Nera said, her gaze piercing. "You have the option to take the path of peace. But first, you must let go of your past, your weapons, your fear. If you cannot, then your civilization will never truly rise." Erica's hand hovered over her sidearm for a moment longer before she slowly holstered it. The choice was no longer about survival. It was about something deeper, something more profound. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since the Elithians had arrived, Erica felt something close to hope.